the Baja Divide. This was a bikepacking adventure that me and my friend decided to embark on randomly out of the blue one day when we were a little bit sick and tired of the rat race. Both managed to have the same time off work, and so we looked into what we could do. Most of our adventures had been tramping and things like that, and I did a little bit of mountain biking, but apart from that, very limited in terms of bikepacking. So we did a little 2-day trip, decided it was fun. Then we flew into Los Angeles, did the little shakedown trip to San Diego, which you can watch another video on that. And then we were straight into it, right up the big hill into Tecate, which we're now biking in away from Tecate, into more of the isolated areas. I was a little bit nervous for the border crossing, just because everyone tells you these horror stories of Mexico, but they were so lovely. They even gave us all these compliments, and they thought we were doing such a cool thing, biking. So sometimes the reality is very different to what you think it will be. And we had such a pleasant experience at the border crossing, and also just with everyone that we ran into in Mexico. We started off the journey biking some pretty long trails, some hilly sections. It was still a bit cold, so I'd recommend bringing lots of layers, even though you don't think you're going to need them. I definitely was glad I had them. The scenery was kind of the same for the first week or so. And it was so easy to find camp spots everywhere along the trail. Getting kind of excited about coming to the ocean area, which I was really looking forward to. There were so many dogs that came up out of nowhere in these small towns. And they would just run after you like they were trying to attack you, like. And top tips from the Mexicans that we met, they said you have to bike really slowly, and that helped quite a lot. When you're biking through town, make sure you just bike as slow as you can. Even if they're like zooming in towards you, you just chill out, give them good energy, bike slow, and then honestly, I had no troubles. There was a guy that he got his panniers bitten off because he tried to bike fast away from them. So that would definitely be one of the top tips of the bike trip. So we got into some more rutted areas that had been super washed out by the rain, and it's not like people maintain these roads because they're kind of just like the outback four-wheel drive roads. The farmers would probably maintain them every now and then because that's how they would get to and from the city. And there were quite a lot of people living on random ranches in the middle of nowhere, but we saw them very seldom. We stayed in this town at this guy who actually messaged us from a post we made on the Baja Bikepacking Facebook page, and he said, come along, you can just stay for free. We stayed on his balcony, and it was just so nice, feeling so welcomed in. There was like Mexican music playing the entire night, so you don't get a very good night's sleep in any of these towns. I think it's mainly on the weekends, maybe like Friday, Saturday, Sunday. But that is just the trade-off, isn't it, with being in a Mexican city opposed to being in the outback where it's just nature's noises. And then we got to the ocean, and it was so beautiful. And just having like the sea breeze, being able to stop and go for swims, it really lifted my spirit so much because my spirit was feeling a bit dry by that point. Very cool in terms of like marine life. We saw dolphins, pelicans, just we could have fires a bit more easily because I wasn't so worried about burning down the trees around us, so we could just have fires on the beach, and then we could cook food, which was really nice. It was like the first time we cooked food on Christmas Eve. This was Christmas morning, woke up really early, saw this beautiful sunrise, and then we decided to bike out and meet our friends Theo and Max, who we had met in San Diego, and they were doing the same route. So that was pretty cool. We met up with them, and then we biked with them for a couple of days, I think. Yeah, so there's really like a trail family that you have on any trail. I'm sure it's the same with hiking. You just sort of meet various people and then you pass them at various times. And it's quite nice, eh? Like catching up with random people, all walks of life. One guy just solo bikepacking by himself. These two, they met up and they decided to bike together. One of them was going all the way from Alaska to Argentina, which so many people do. We met a dad and his son who were doing the same journey. And we met like a pack of 5-6 people, but they were just doing like a 1 or 2 week segment. So yeah, lots of different people. If you do want to do a trip and you're just by yourself, don't worry, just do it because you'll meet someone. And chances are you'll also meet somebody that wants to travel with somebody else, and then you can do it together on the road. So never be afraid to go on adventures by yourself because there's always people doing it by themselves. Okay, so this was like a deserted little area that we decided to camp in, and it was pretty cool. We all had like these little places that we could pitch our tents, have a fire. It was quite nice with like a couple more people as well, 4 of us. And then in the morning we biked off to find a little shop that we could have a second breakfast and then maybe a third breakfast, because you get so hungry on the road when you're biking, just hungry all the time. I think I probably already said that, but it's a very important factor to think about. And also, if you want to do a journey, remember, you will eat more than you've ever eaten in your life if you're biking every day. And you need to as well, because food is fuel. But it is also really important to find the right food. And it is kind of hard. Like, America and Baja had pretty unhealthy stocks, like lots of sugar. Probably I didn't make it easier on myself that I didn't eat meat or dairy. So yeah, I was kind of just living off of beans, refried beans that came in little packets, which were actually really handy. And beans are great for you, but when you're just eating beans and like tortillas and coriander and then sugar, maybe not the best. This route we tried to go down, and we wanted to go like around the ocean, but it was just way too muddy because it had been raining a couple days. So then we had to go on the highway for a little bit, and it was quite sad because there were lots of dead dogs. I say this when there's a video of alive dogs, which were beautiful dogs, but there were so many dead dogs along the highway, which just shows such a different way of viewing dogs in a different country. Often they'd like fallen off trucks and things and just been left there. But anyway, that's enough of that sad story. This was a school that we went to with, I think it was potentially like a Christian funded school, but we had met a guy that was biking and he was doing some volunteer work there, or he had even founded it with someone else, and he went there and did quite a lot of help and things. And we just went and we hung out with the kids, and they loved seeing us, and I gave them my little GoPro and they could like video themselves and look at themselves, and they loved it. And I think they just really liked having some young bike packers coming through. And I like to think that they had an impression of, oh my gosh, I can do this one day. That would have been really cool to leave that impression with them. And then we continued along the trail after our lovely rest day, and we went along a section that was probably the hardest section of the whole trip, but luckily we found dragon fruit along this section, and then we realised we could actually eat dragon fruit even though we got loads of thistles in our hands. It was worth it. But yeah, the section was definitely very hard, just like so bumpy, even with suspension on the bike. It was just like so uncomfortable to ride because you're just bumping all the time. And yeah, mentally, physically, definitely hard. We actually met one guy at the end of the trip and his frame had broken because he had an electric gear changer, and along the section all of the rocks and the stones bumped it and jammed it, so he was pushing and pushing, and then his frame just broke. So quite lucky that we didn't experience that, but we did have some leaky water bottles and things, which wasn't great because it was 2-day section, or 3 days 2 nights without any shops, but we managed. We were very low on water by the end, and I remember not having any water and thinking, oh no, how am I going to do this? But I made it, which was awesome. And there were some really beautiful sections on this part as well, like wild horses that just ran through, and we started to see some really cool cacti just drooping over the roads. It was, at the time, looking back, I can see how awesome it was, but at the time it was kind of difficult to enjoy because I was very exhausted and kind of over it by this point. But I guess it's just a natural part of the journey, isn't it? And yeah, definitely type 2, even maybe type 3 fun. So not super fun at the time. But you learn a lot about yourself when things get tough. Heaps about yourself. And I feel so grateful that I even had the opportunity to go on this trip and learn all those things and strengthen so many aspects. And I think that's why a lot of people love bikepacking, because they also get to really experience different versions of themselves, go into the pain cave, go into the frustration cave, figure out what they enjoy, what they don't enjoy. So much learning and gratitude for this entire journey. And also just so grateful to be so privileged to do something like this. Like being able to just not work, bike, sleep, eat, and enjoy a country. It's pretty cool, pretty magnificent. And then, yeah, just kept biking. So the camping, I was a little bit worried about camping at first, not knowing where to pitch a tent. But it was honestly so easy, and everyone that we ran into, there was a couple utes that would come past on those backcountry roads, but they were all just so lovely and weren't really bothered by us at all, which is pretty cool. Yeah, so this was the part where we went back onto the road, which felt like such a luxury. My emotions just peaked because I just felt so thankful to just be able to go fast along a road and just enjoy the wind in my hair. And we met up with some of the other trail riders at this point, stayed at a campground which said that they had luxurious showers, in which we found out that it was a bucket with a few holes in it that you fill up with freezing cold water, but it was perfect. It was exactly what we needed. Stopped at the supermarket, topped up on all of our food, and then hit the road again, heading towards the ocean again, which made me super excited. And settling into like life on the road, and body was feeling like pretty good at this point. I feel like I conditioned really well to be able to go biking. I didn't really do any training for this trip, but I was running and I was pretty fit in other areas, which I think translated really easily. So this time we biked out to the coast, and this was New Year's Eve, and we thought about having a beautiful sunrise morning on New Year's Day. So we packed up, put our tents up. It did feel like a bit of a weird area and a bit of a weird vibe. And obviously, like, you don't want to impose on people's holiday homes. And there were some people just around the corner that had a holiday home, but we chatted to them. They were smiley and friendly, and I don't think they minded us being there. But that's right. It all worked out in the end, and we saw dolphins, like huge pods of dolphins, had little solo explores around the coast, which was really cool. And then started biking the next day, and this day was the worst day of the entire trip. This was honestly, mentally and physically, the biggest breakdown ever. Going into the trip, obviously, was a little bit unexpected, this entire journey. So there was a lot of YouTubing how to fix bikes, and like even preparing my bike, changing tires, figuring out how to like change a cassette and all these sorts of things. And I did feel pretty prepared, but this day brought a big challenge, because it may not look like it now, nice clear blue skies, but then there was a flash flood, and this section was like 4 days without any shops, so like we had to carry all our own water and food, and the only other people that were out on this road were people that were going surfing, like mostly Americans that came down with their 4-wheel drives and went surfing, because there was really good surf along this section, which was cool, and saved us in the end, because when there was a flash flood, there was so much mud, you can imagine the ground. I was so stressed, I was not filming any of it, but I should have, because it was crazy. There were all these 4-wheel drives going as fast as they can to try to get out of the rain and the mud, getting stuck, having motorbikes lead them. It was so hectic, and after scooping relentlessly all the mud from the chain and trying to bike, because we wanted to find a place or shelter that we could set up, or somewhere that was somewhat dry, because we couldn't just set up our tents on the wet ground. My derailleur ended up snapping because there was too much mud to push through. My legs were too strong. And the type of derailleur I had, it wasn't one that you could just replace. It was actually fused onto the other parts. So as you can see here, I tried to convert my bike to a single speed with quick links, which I successfully did, but I did it too tight. So yeah, I messed that up a little bit, and then we didn't know what to do. There was nobody around for hours. We were sitting there having a little cry, thinking life is so miserable. And then we went for a swim, and then we decided we were just going to walk our bikes until someone came along, hoping someone would come along, and if they didn't, we would pitch our tents, and then the next morning we would walk our bikes. But these two surfer brothers came along, saved the day, picked us up, bought us fish tacos when we got to the town. They were just the sweetest, kindest people. And look, they even gave me a derailleur off of their bike. It was an old bike that they had, and they said, you can use this derailleur. So they took it off, gave it to me. There were some other bikers coming through that had quick links, which is the chain to, the chain is made of quick links. So I was given quick links that I could use to make the chain bigger again, because I had tried to make it single speed, so shortened it. And then my bike worked and I could bike to a bike shop to actually get it properly fixed, because the derailleur I had only was able to use like 4 of my gears. But it was just amazing how everybody just wanted to help, eh? And like when you actually are in the shit, it all seems to work out. Like when we were in that desert, I honestly was thinking like, how is this going to work out? I'm probably just going to be starving and hungry and have to fly home because my bike is ruined. But somehow everything works out. And one of the biggest lessons in that was kind of shifting from, at the start, being quite anxious about the situation, like, oh my god, what's going to happen in the future with my bike? And then realizing, well, there's no point worrying if you can't do anything about it. So just relax. That was probably one of the biggest lessons, big life lesson. If you can't do anything about it, there's no point being anxious. So that was like hands-on lesson for that one, which was great. And we made it to this bike shop, Ian's bike shop, who was a local, and he helped fix my bike, which was just so magical. But I am also jumping ahead because we're still biking down the highway towards Ian's bike shop and camping like maybe 100 meters off the highway. But it was a really good feeling because like my bike was working, we were in a group, we were really close to this town, and had a fire, felt really good and safe and happy. And road riding is so easy after being in the rutted back country. So everything was smooth and happy and nice. Apart from, I have to say, like, I could not go road riding for a whole trip because the cars just zoom past you and everything's smelly and yeah, it's not that delightful. But it was perfect in this instance. And you can see like the line is so straight because the highway down Baja is like one straight line right down Baja, which is pretty crazy. And yeah, here we are heading off to the bike shop, feeling good with cars zooming past and stopping because there's way more shops, and then the sugar addiction gets real because you start drinking Coca-Cola and sugary snacks and all the things that you can. So this is Ian, and this is Ian fixing my bike, and Ian was even kind enough to let us stay in his backyard, which was a few streets away from the bike shop, where we tented, and that was perfect apart from the loud Mexican music playing the entire night until like midnight, and then it started again at like 2. But honestly, I was just thankful to be there by that point. And so then from this point we headed off again along the motorway again because we'd gone a little bit off of the actual divide to get to this point, and we headed down to this wonderful town. We were starting to get into some really dry territory with just endless flatness as well, and beautiful cacti everywhere. It would be kind of tricky actually to find a spot to eat lunch because there were so many thistles, and obviously you also have tires on your bike, so you don't want to get any thistles in your tire. But if you do anything where it's likely to cause holes in your tire, I would highly recommend tubeless tires, which is what we had, and it was a game changer. It's filled with this liquid glue type fluid, and if you get a hole, it just like the pressure forces it to fill the hole, and then hole is fixed all by itself. This was San Ignacio, which was a really lovely little stop as well, and we stayed at this place that was very welcoming of biking and walking people, travellers coming through. So we met a collection of people, Started seeing a lot of the missionary churches with huge amounts of wealth, which was really bizarre after coming through the hills. But yeah, that was quite interesting, and really cool to be in that little town with the wealth of the water and swimming and so many dates. Like, I would just climb date trees and get dates. Yeah, so pretty cool being surrounded by so much wealth and abundance and beauty. And then as we headed back towards the coastal sections, there was a lot of very flat, sandy, big rides, but it was very compacted sand, very easy to ride. Often would have headwinds, which would actually make it a bit harder, but then we had tailwind potentially on this day, and it just felt so good. You could just go for miles and miles, and it would be so easy. You felt like you're speeding. And then camping again, super easy, fires, super easy to cook things, which was beautiful. And yeah, getting into the swing of things. There was actually a bit of elevation, 640 metres on this day, day 17, because we were heading back over some of those mountains to get back inland a little bit again. So I guess when there was a hill, it would be like biking up onto the big flat plateau and then kind of more along and down. So not super steep, more gradual increases. And yeah, out into the ranch area with the farming, wild horses, lots of cows, and lots of heat. It was so hot. It was actually quite hard to find little shady areas, but then we did come to another lagoon, had another swim, which was just so beautiful. Like those parts of the trip are what make it, when you can go to a lagoon and have a swim on a scorching hot day, especially when it's unexpected as well. And we ended up on this coastal town, and we stayed with a Warm Showers host. He actually made us pizza. He had a pizza oven, and he let us use his electric bikes for a couple of days while we were there and exploring around with the pelicans, the coastal town. It was quite a touristy town, as in there was a lot of immigrants living there, not so many Mexicans. It had very good surf as well. So Yaz and Casper had food poisoning while we were there, hence why we had some rest days, and we hitchhiked from that town to La Paz, which was the end destination for going down Baja. And then we just embraced the ocean in La Paz, which is an extremely touristy city. And we went swimming with whale sharks, which was so magical. Big, beautiful creatures, so calm. And just, walking around the city, enjoying a little bit more of the luxurious life. And then we headed off on our Cape Loop adventure, which was a trip around the bottom of Baja, just around the very bottom. So this trip involved a lot of snorkeling and a lot of ocean time. We would stop so often and just go snorkeling and enjoying like the luxury of life, and a lot of more road riding out to these areas. And this was just a wee spot we saw on the map as a really good snorkeling spot, and someone had also told us about it at the hostel. So we camped there for a couple of days, went snorkeling lots. I went for like a wee mountain bike around the coast from there. There were some cool trails. that a lot of people from America actually were rebuilding at the time, and eating kinna, which is sea urchins. We have lots of kinna in New Zealand as well. And then back on the road and more into the backcountry hills again, which was enjoyable because there's less people, and we'd stocked up on enough food and comfort for a while in the city, and we went down to these little areas where we would then camp and then snorkel and eat, and I quite liked this part of the journey actually. I think I enjoyed the contrast of terrain, the mountains, the ocean, and then like the small towns we'd come across. This was a very enjoyable section for me. And probably also because I just snorkeled so much and got a lot of water time, which I am all about. This was a magical moment. This was a school of fish, and it was often like a relatively rough area around the corner from where we were camping, but it looked like there would be some really good fish. So I jumped in with no fins, and it was so worth it because the school of fish was just majestic. Look at them. It was so majestic. Yeah, very plentiful oceans down there. Abundance. The ocean's aquarium, apparently, according to Sylvia Earle and others. So yeah, it was pretty cool just being able to snorkel and kind of have a little bit of a different variety in the trip, because that is so important, having variety. Even seeing donkeys on the trail, that's variety there for you. I was pretty surprised at the amount of non-Mexicans that were living around the Cape Loop. Often like their second home, like living half the year down there and then half the year in America or in Europe or wherever. I think just because it is so warm and the ocean is so plentiful, that why not? We've got so much sun on this section, and it was pretty hard to keep up with sun smart protection, to be honest. And we came around to Cabo Pulmo, which was a very famous scuba diving spot. But actually the time of year made it not so good for scuba diving because the viz was really bad. So I didn't actually get to go scuba diving there, but I think I'll go back there one day because it's pretty cool with some other diving enthusiasts. And yeah, again, like the Mexican people we saw, like just before that was a fire station, and we went in because we had run out of water. We were so thirsty, and they're like, yeah, of course, just top up your drink bottles. Whereas the water that they had there, they probably had limited resources as well. So much kindness. And then little shops topping up on food, and there's this super cute kid there who was just watching TV in the middle of the shop, and he looked like very interested in what we were doing, probably because we were biking and we had our helmets on. He was super cute. Bought some more sugar to top up and then hit the road. Nice roads again along the journey. Just like so thankful for that tar seal road, but then the trade-off of traffic. So we saw at this camping spot some flying stingrays. They were just slapping the water the whole night. and I didn't know what noise was, and then I look out my tent and I see these magical stingrays flying across the water, which is pretty cool. Like, you do not see those things in New Zealand. So that was awesome to see some flying stingrays. And from here we just continued along that coastal loop, and yeah, we didn't really see any other bikers along this loop, but there are a lot of people that do the Cape Loop as well. Yeah, and it was pretty easy to find camp spots along this part of the journey as well. And we did see one other biker. Actually, he's coming up in the video now, and he was an Australian dude, and he was just doing the loop by himself. I think he'd done quite a few biking trips. He had a very lightweight setup. There are so many different biking setups that you can do. Even like you look at my rack, I use the Aero rack, which is dry bags compared to the panniers. And you can also do like a seat bag which sits under your seat, which is extremely lightweight. There's so many options, and it's honestly, there's no best choice. It's just what personal preference, like what fits your style of riding the best. Yeah. I was making the most of all of the time in the ocean for sure. Very much an ocean child. Growing up next to the ocean in New Zealand, I think it just makes me feel like home. Quite sentimental. Yeah, and then obviously jumping straight back into the desert with wild sandy roads and tourism and houses everywhere along the coast, for sections of it anyway. And then at the end of our time, we booked a fancy hotel where we stayed, which was so cool. And this was like a little reflection video that I took, so I'll let you listen to that.
Yeah, like there were some people that we met, people that we hitchhiked with for parts when my derailleur broke, and then we hitchhiked to get to La Paz, and those people were just so kind and generous, and seeing the way of life and seeing their way of life, and even just like the little Mexican villages and thinking about the different lives, like just the tiny interactions with people in shops or just random people, even the school we went to and hung out with those kids, and like the warm showers hosts, we had a couple. Realizing there are so many beautiful, incredible people, and also the way that they live their lives, learning lessons from them.